are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You ever feel like you just really need to sneeze, but you can't quite get it out? That's probably the state I'm going to be in for this entire episode. What's going on, everybody? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, writer for Sports Illustrated for various SEC-related things. But on this podcast, specifically, we take a dive into all things Kentucky athletics. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be diving a little more in depth to a question that we answered on the most recent episode of Locked On Kentucky. We're going to talk about the rotation. I'm going to talk about the backcourt rotation, what I think it should look like from a minutes perspective. We're going to talk about the frontcourt rotation. I think some players should be getting more minutes than they currently are. I think there's one particular player that needs to have his minutes cut down just a little bit. And then finally, I want to talk about bracketology. I want to talk about where the Wildcats are. And I want to talk about the emphasis on the net rankings and how important this upcoming stretch is for the Kentucky Wildcats. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. We'll remind everybody out there that we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So if you're watching there, it would be great if you subscribed. All right, Kentucky right now, I think, is doing some things rotationally that have started to spark what has been an impressive two-game stretch. Now, obviously, a two-game stretch is essentially nothing. You want to see more production out of your guys over the course of a longer period of time. But this two-game stretch also consisted of a top-5 win over the Tennessee Volunteers. And so I think we saw some things in that game from John Calipari where he tinkered with the lineups and it produced results. And right now, I think Kentucky is at a really, really important pivot point this season. And if they want to be able to capitalize on what momentum they have built, they need to change some things up, continue to change some things up. I think Cal knows that, and I think they're going to do it. But here's what I think the backcourt rotation should look like. Right now, Sahvir Wheeler has an injury. He did not play against Tennessee. Kentucky won. He played 11 minutes against Georgia. Kentucky won bigger. Cason Wallace has been the guy this season that I have been hyping up, that I have been so excited about, and we've gotten to see him produce, and I have said that he is an efficient point guard and that I don't necessarily know if he's going to be able to take the starting role from Sahvir Wheeler, but I definitely think that he should have his minutes boosted. Right now, according to KenPom, ESPN.com, wherever you look, it's all going to be the same. Cason Wallace is averaging 30.2 minutes per game. In those 30 minutes, he's averaging 11 points, 3.5 rebounds, almost 4 assists, 2 steals, and he's shooting 47% from the floor. I think it is statistically the best percentage for a guard that Kentucky has. I think Kentucky should up his minutes from 30 to 35. And the reason I say that is because I think it will take away from the other point guard that Kentucky has in Sahvir Wheeler. Right now, Sahvir Wheeler is averaging 31 minutes a game. I think Kentucky needs to take him down to 25. I think Cason Wallace should be playing 10 more minutes a game than Sahvir Wheeler. According to my comment section, this is not a hot take. A lot of you agree that Sahvir Wheeler this season, while statistically he may have improved in certain areas, he is not performing as good as Cason Wallace has as the starting point guard. One of you asked, and we'll get to this question in a second, about why Kentucky couldn't utilize them both. I don't think Cason Wallace will do most of his damage off ball. I think he is a more effective player on the ball. I think he is a more effective player as a potential scoring option with the ball in his hand. I think Sahvir Wheeler has done some great things for this program. He's definitely gotten close to some records. I believe broke a couple of assist records. But Sahvir Wheeler is not, I think, overall a better point guard than Cason Wallace. And it's a shame because Cason is a freshman. If I'm not mistaken, he's an 18-year-old freshman. Sahvir Wheeler's been playing college ball for quite some time now. And Cason Wallace has stepped in and proven that he can be better at scoring. He's a better shooter. He's a better defender. So I think Cason Wallace should be getting, again, 10 more minutes than Sahvir Wheeler. If you've got any thoughts on what I say about the rotation today, I would love to hear your comments. Would love to hear your thoughts. CJ Fredrick right now is averaging 22 minutes a game. Some of you have been upset with CJ Fredrick. Understandably so. He's not the most prolific shooter this season as opposed to what he has done in seasons past at Iowa. But he's averaging almost 8 points a game. He's averaging 1.5 assists per contest, and he's the best free throw shooter on the team. I think that CJ Fredrick should be playing the minutes that he's playing right now. I think they should keep it the same. I think John Calipari should keep his minutes at 22, somewhere around 22. Because right now, I think that it's not going to take a increasing or decreasing of his minutes to get more efficiency out of him. I think you're going to have his good nights. I think you're going to have his bad nights. I think that's just what you have with CJ Fredrick right now. And he was 1 of 8, I believe, in the game against Georgia. But you're also going to have the games where he goes 4 of 7 from the floor. Give CJ Fredrick his 22 minutes. He's a part of one of the best rotations that Kentucky has. If I'm not mistaken, Evan Minaya, who has a really, really great college basketball analytics site, recently posted that the lineup of CJ Fredrick, Cason Wallace, Antonio Reeves, I can't remember who was at the 4. I can't remember if it was Jacob Toppin or Chris Bill Livingston, and then Oscar Tshiebwe, is like the most efficient lineup that any team has put out since like the 2019 season, which is insane to think about. That lineup is outscoring opponents, specifically in that Tennessee game. It showed that lineup can outscore opponents significantly. So I think CJ Fredrick, hot, cold, let him stay at the minutes that he's at right now. Antonio Reeves, like we just mentioned, is a part of that really big rotation. Right now, he is currently playing 27 minutes a game, 24. I think they should bump it up a little bit, somewhere around 27 minutes. And look, it doesn't necessarily take a specific amount of minutes to get a specific amount of results out of a player. I'm not going to sit here and tell you if their minutes go up by 3, they're going to become world beaters overnight. It's tinkering with the individual products on the team to make a more consistent whole, is what I think Cal's obviously trying to get at, and what I'm trying to get at here. Antonio Reeves, second leading scorer on the team, averaging 12 points a game. He's shooting 39% from 3, 78% from the foul line. He's averaging 2 rebounds, 1.2 assists, and just 23 minutes of action. I think that if you give him a little bit more opportunity off the bench, he will get you buckets. Now, it may not be the most efficient field goal percentage per night, but he's going to get you buckets. And if you give him more time, I think he is going to learn more. I think he's going to grow more. I think there's going to be chemistry with this really, really nice lineup that Kentucky has found, this lineup that Kentucky has finally discovered halfway through the season. So giving him more opportunities to kind of shine in that, I think, is important because he is the second best scorer on this team. Not just statistically, I think overall. With what he offers, I think, at all 3 levels of the game. 3-point line, mid-range, right at the basket. The final player here in the backcourt rotation is Dawe Thiero. I've been excited about Thiero. I've been pleased with what I've seen. Statistically, his numbers are not good, just to be completely honest with you. Shooting 30% from the floor is not great. Shooting 40% from 3 is. He's averaging almost 11 minutes a game. He's played 9 games. He's averaging 11 minutes in those contests. Do you remember back before the season started after Thiero committed? And we were asking the question, I even put up a poll about this, about whether or not Thiero should get, or what we thought his minutes per game would average out to. I think a lot of you said 2 to 3. I think that was the final answer, is the majority percentage was 2 to 3 minutes. Well, he's averaging 11. I'm surprised by that. And I think that he should stay at about 10 to 11 minutes per game. I don't think he hurts this team with what he does whenever he comes in, although shooting 30% from the floor is not good. But I also don't think that relegating his minutes is going to help him specifically because of what he could mean to this team in the future. And I don't necessarily know what he's going to mean to this team next year because of what Rob Dillingham is going to be able to do at the point guard spot. But after Rob, theoretically, goes one and done, I think you're looking at, Thiero as somebody that Kentucky looks toward. Maybe not a starting role. Maybe. I don't know. But given the minutes that he's getting so far, I think that's fair. All right, I want to move to the front court rotation. I want to talk about what this team looks like in the front court. There is one specific player that I think Kentucky should be limiting their minutes just a little bit. And after diving into the numbers, I think that, it's not as drastic as I once thought it would be, but I still think that the change needs to be made. Before I get to that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football, college basketball, NBA. They've got every single sport over there over at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. You can head to a website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. Still fighting that sneeze. Lance Dawe here with you, hanging out on the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky. The front court rotation. Now, this may not be the most exciting thing to talk about because I think it's pretty set in stone what Kentucky has starting at the 4 and the 5. And that would be Jacob Toppin and Oscar Tshiebwe. Let's start here with Tshiebwe, though. Tshiebwe is averaging 33 minutes per game. I see no reason to change this. He's averaging 17 points a game. He's doing what he did last year statistically. I mean, you have to be pleased. He's not dropped off on the offensive end. It's the defensive end that I think concerns a lot of people. And I think it's less about relegating his minutes there and giving another player opportunity to shine. And that's Ugonna Onyenso. I think that Ugonna Onyenso's minutes should double. Right now, he's averaging 7 minutes per game. I think Kentucky should give him 14. In those 7.6 minutes per game that he gets, he averages 1.1 blocks. And I know that these are very simple statistics here for you. I'm not diving into the per 40 or anything like that. But I think it's pretty clear that Ugonna is the best rim defender that Kentucky has on the team. He is also one of the most inexperienced players on the team, which hampers Calipari's ability to actually play him and feel comfortable and confident. He is also very raw on the offensive end. I think what he brings to the table defensively is so important that Kentucky is going to need to play him against taller teams as this SEC slate rolls on. I think it has to happen. If they want to prevent what happened against Alabama, they're going to play him more. Because Oscar Tshiebwe has proven he cannot be the answer on that end of the floor. He cannot be it. And Lance Ware, let's move on to him. Lance Ware also, I don't think, is a phenomenal defender. Now, he plays hard. He fights. That's what I like about Lance Ware. He plays hard. He's energetic. I believe he has like one of the highest field goal percentages on the team. It may be the highest at 64.5%. But I think you take his minutes down from 13 to about 10. I think you'd relegate it just a little bit. Lance Ware, I think, at 6'9", to go along with Tshiebwe, is not the most productive player to have out there in your lineup as opposed to a player like Onyenso, because I think strictly of what they do on the defensive end. Ugonna Onyenso is a few inches taller. He also provides more in terms of shot blocking and rim protecting. Give him the experience that he needs while you continue to tinker with this lineup. Now, let me be clear. I think the biggest rotation should be moving forward for Kentucky. I think it should be Cason Wallace, CJ Fredrick, Antonio Reeves, somebody either between Chris Livingston and Jacob Toppin at the 4, and then Oscar Tshiebwe at the 5. Everything that happens after that, I think is experimental, and it is learning what this team, lineup-wise, can do with each other whenever you start to swap out some of these pieces. We've gotten to see Coach Cal do some weird things, like put Onyenso and Tshiebwe out there at the same time. I don't know if that necessarily works. I've not even bothered to look and see if that lineup was even efficient, if at all. But Kentucky's got to be able to do some different things past that good lineup. Do I think that lineup should start? I don't know. One of you asked me about this in a comment just a day or so ago about, well, why wouldn't that lineup start? I think it has to do with a lot with what's going on the defensive end. I meant to bring a stat to you guys, and I may bring it on tomorrow's episode. But there is a defensive statistic that I learned about from our friend Sean Vinzel at Hoops Insight that gives me pause with that rotation, with that lineup, in the rotation, because I think that there are more opportunities to play better on that side of the floor if you play different players, like Onyenso. So to kind of put a bow on it, I think Cason Wallace should be getting more minutes. Sahvir Wheeler should be getting less. Fredrick and Thiero should be the same. Reeves should get a little bit more. Oscar Tshiebwe should be the same. Lance Ware should be getting slightly less. Jacob Toppin, who I just didn't mention, he should be getting, I think, the exact same. He averages 28 minutes a game. He's like Fredrick. He's going to be hot. He's going to be cold, typically more cold than hot. He's the best option we have at the 4. Livingston there would be a little bit undersized. It is what it is. And then Onyenso, I think his minutes should double. I think he is the biggest change that Kentucky may make in their lineup moving forward. So that's what I think about the rotation. If you've got any thoughts on it, please give me your opinion in the YouTube comments below. Would love to hear what you have to say about it. All right, I want to move on to the bracketology. Kentucky right now is starting to find their way back into it. I know that it was really, really kind of surprising, kind of shocking after that non-con slate whenever I said, I don't know if Kentucky's going to make the NCAA tournament. Well, as it turns out, that's more of a nightmare. That reality is more of a nightmare than we may have thought. But they're climbing back into it. And the net rankings, I think, are going to be very important for them coming up. Before I get to that, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Built Bar. Guys, if you're looking for a really delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, then you have got to try a Built Bar. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate, and it tastes phenomenal. On top of this, if you've listened to this show, you already know. They've got some really, really good flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, and I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. On top of that, they're really, really good for you. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Just the other day, this is not a bit, this is not for the read, I was hanging out at one of my friend's house, and I go into their kitchen, and they have on a little plate in the corner of the kitchen a bunch of Built Bars. And I asked them, I'm like, oh, where'd y'all get Built Bars from? I've been talking about them for over a year. They're phenomenal. And they're like, yeah, we stand Built Bars in this house. They're really, really good. And they just got added to Sam's and Walmart. So we don't have to go online to order them anymore. We can just go straight to our store and pick them up. So if you're heading to Walmart, heading to Sam's Club, you can go and get yourself a box. You can pick up a box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs, like I mentioned, brownie batter or churro. They've got some really, really good options out there right now. And if you don't feel like going to your local store there, you can head over to built.com to order yourself a box today. Would highly encourage you guys to check this out. You can thank me later. All right, wrapping up the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I think the sneeze has subsided, so we can be thankful for that. We can also be thankful for the fact that Kentucky is finally starting to climb back into bracketology. So according to ESPN, if you waddle on over there to that website and see what Joe Lunardi has put out, the man, the myth, the legend, Kentucky is currently the first team out of the NCAA tournament. Now you may say, Lance, well, that means they're not in. Well, they're not in on ESPN. They are very close to being in. According to CBS Sports, it tells a different story. Jerry Palm believes that Kentucky right now would be an 11 seed in the East region, and they would face off against Illinois, a team I would not touch with a 10-foot pole. So Kentucky right now is finally fighting their way back into it. They've made their way back into a bracketology. They're on the verge on the other national one at ESPN, and these two guys know what they're talking about. Jerry and Joe, they know what's up. They've been doing this for quite some time. They know exactly what they're doing whenever it comes to this. Jerry Palm did not just stick Kentucky in there at 11 for no reason. It's not bias. It's all about analytics, and it's about the net rankings. So if you've not listened to the show or you don't know what the net rankings are, it is a mathematical system that has recently been put in place that, if I'm not mistaken, does not start until the system has collected enough data on each individual team. So it's a few weeks into the season before the net rankings actually start taking place. And then they finally start to grade you out based on how you've performed and then your quad wins. How you've played on the road, how you played at neutral sites, your overall record, obviously, your strength of schedule. Quad wins are interesting. So the system divvies up all 361 teams, I think, nationally. I think it expanded from 358 to 363, excuse me. But out of those 363 teams, it divvies it up into 4 quads. Quad 1, obviously, is the best of the bunch. Quad 2 is a decent amount of teams that probably won't make the NCAA tournament, but they're going to get close. Quad 3 is kind of that lower tier, and then Quad 4 is the worst of the bunch out there. Kentucky right now is 40th in the net rankings. They are 12-6 overall. They are 10-1 at home. They are 1-3 in road games, and they are 1-2 at neutral sites. The most important thing that you have to note about Kentucky in the net rankings is that they are 1-5 against quad 1 opponents. That is not good. You need to have more quad 1 wins if you are going to feel comfortable about banking the NCAA tournament as a non-auto bid, as an at-large bid. Kentucky has to pick up some more important wins. Guys, I've been talking about it since the non-con slate. It's not about the record. It's about who you've beaten. Kentucky could be 12-6 right now, but if they had beaten Michigan State and Gonzaga and UCLA, and they had just happened to lose 3 other games, they would be in a completely different spot right now, simply based on the net rankings and simply based on what these bracketologies are predicting. It is so important that you beat the good teams. That's more important than anything. Kentucky has several opportunities to make that happen. They play Kansas. They play Mississippi State, Tennessee, Florida, Auburn, Arkansas, who has completely fallen off the face of the earth recently. Those are all teams that could be considered quad 1 or quad 2 opponents. You have to build up your record there. By the way, if you just look at the quad 2, Kentucky is 1-0 in that department. They've only played 1 quad 2 game. They have to be able to pick up some of these SEC wins against these decent opponents. And what did we talk about on yesterday's show? You've got Vanderbilt and you got Texas A&M coming up. Both those games are going to be close, but they're winnable. They're going to be tough. I'm not saying Kentucky is going to blow them out. I'm not saying they're going to cakewalk through them. Let me be very clear. These are losable games, but they're also winnable. Most analytics sites would tell you that Kentucky should be, rightfully so, favored in those games. Pick up your wins where you can get them. There is a stretch there. Mississippi, Florida, Arkansas, Georgia. Those 4 games coming after the Kansas game. 2 of those games are at home. 2 of them are on the road. You can execute. If you go out there, you go 3-1 in that stretch, all of a sudden, things are looking much better for Kentucky heading into the NCAA tournament. And we're not counting this team out of winning anything, right? We're not counting them out. We saw North Carolina have a similar path last season. And then all of a sudden, as an 8 seed, they went off and just exploded onto the scene. Before the NCAA tournament, they were 24-9, right? Kentucky absolutely can go on some type of tear here and build some momentum and get into the tournament and upset a 1 seed and then make their way up. It's all still possible. It's all still on the table. I think that we should be, right now, cautiously optimistic about where the Wildcats could be heading. I think that there's opportunity. Now, will they execute? I'm not saying that they are going to. But at least there's a chance. And so rotationally, I think things need to continue to be adjusted and then build on the momentum that Kentucky has built so far. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. If you've got any thoughts about what's going on with the Wildcats right now, leave it in the YouTube comments below. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK, and you can follow the show on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the YouTube comments below or hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.